Hi everyone, welcome to Frisky, a podcast about everything marketing and sexuality with Daniela and Athanasia.
Welcome back. Thank you for listening. So today's episode is focused on a performance or a ritual, as she said, that took place in Manchester between the 9th and the 19th of October. This is the Balkan Erotic Epic by Marina Abramović. So today, Athanasia and I will discuss a bit how did that feel, because it felt, very on theme with Frisky.
So yes, we don't have Marina joining us for the episode today. It's just a solo episode with me and Daniela. We recently attended the event and we have thoughts.
Of course we do. So the event was taking place in Manchester's Aviva Studios, which is an incredible venue for events of all kinds. But because this was such a massive production, the event took place in the hangar, which is really a gigantic space, I would say, all taken over by the performance, which lasted 4 hours. And I think something we should mention, that before walking in, your phone was locked away in a pouch. So you couldn't bring in your phone, you couldn't keep track of time. So very immersive, as probably marketers would define it.
Also, we had no idea what to expect, because looking into the description of the event, they said that it's neither a play, nor an opera, nor a static exhibition, but something altogether wilder, larger, and more daring. So we really didn't know what to expect. I also wasn't sure if Marina was going to perform, if she was going to be there. It was very vague from the description of the event. And then we arrive at the space and we are introduced to the performance from
Marina herself, actually. Yeah. She gave a quick introduction to the crowd that started gathering in the lobby, explaining how this performance is based on folk tradition of the Balkans. And she is really putting in it her most ambitious work, coordinating different pieces at once. I think we read is 13 of them, and gathering her own memories as a child of her mother, of Tito's death, but also of traditions and tales and rituals that try and answer questions such as life, death. I think she said how gods are born, and these sort of universal collective queries that we maybe share. It was very powerful as an introduction, I'd say. It set the expectation. And we were walked up by a band, like a marching band, with trombones and everything, into the venue.
It was really interesting also the fact that she said that she was able to put together this show only in Manchester because they gave her the creative freedom to explore these themes. And I suppose because there was a lot of nudity involved, there might not be that many spaces that would be as open to welcome such an exploration. So that was quite interesting, the way that she connected her work and also the space, Aviva Studios and Manchester, as a place that enabled her to do this exploration. But yes, we were walked upstairs with this band.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting, although I have to admit that I saw the doors of the elevator opening and I ran.
I thought you were mad at me for something because you completely eloped from the queue.
It was on the 2nd floor and I was like, okay, this is interesting, but I would rather take the lift upstairs, which I did. And then the doors open and we go inside this huge space, which was very overwhelming at the beginning because you didn't really know where to go first, right?
I would say the fascinating aspect about the curation of this event is that everything happened at once. So the sound design of the space was incredible because you could at one hand focus on the performance in front of you, but at the same time hear echoes of other things going on at once. And while it was overwhelming, it wasn't just pure chaos, which you would imagine out of the number of performers, I think is 70 of them, and the number of people within the venue. But before talking about the performance, I would like to talk about how the event was presented, because I think Balkan Erotic Epic is already giving a lot of hints on what to expect. And because we're marketing scholars, I think it's important to mention a bit how the event was marketed, with these billboards of certain visual beauty, I would say, with Balkan women covering their breasts while being dressed in traditional Balkan clothes. And the feeling was that we would be watching something, yes, very much erotic, very much connected to nudity, to desire. I think that was given away a lot by the poster. But at the same time, epic, for me, suggests something related to culture, to, again, folk stories. So there was all this already, all the ingredients were in the title, if that makes sense.
I agree with you. I went in expecting something epic as well. And also I was very much interested in how she explores sexuality, sex, and ritual within that work that she put together. And at the same time, I also wasn't sure what to expect because of the description of the performance as something epic and as something...
Like the 4-hour duration.
Yes, the 4-hour duration. Like she said at the beginning, oh, you should stay in the space for 4 hours. And also she said, explore the space on your own. So when we walked in, we kind of stayed together in the beginning, and then after a point we started to explore the space on our own. And I was very hesitant at the beginning of how to navigate this space, because you could basically walk around and watch different installments of different performers doing quite different things, and you also didn't know when one ends, in a sense, to move to the next, but then it didn't end. It was a continuous performance.
Yeah, some were acts that would go on repetition. So for example, there was this ritual that she said she didn't invent, it was actually copied by original sources, where women would expose, on this fake lawn, women would expose their vaginas to the sky in order to scare gods when the rain wouldn't stop coming. And so you would have for 4 hours women in turn taking turns screaming and lifting their dresses, like simply chilling in this lawn, like with bare legs in the sky. And it was kind of like going, so it wasn't the very same action, but like variations of this ritual for 4 hours, on and on and on. While others would be like the death of Tito, like a dance piece that I think went on twice in the during the 4 hours of the ritual.
I think that all of them were rituals traditionally from different areas in the Balkans, and if you got the booklet that described the exhibition, she said from which region in the Balkans each ritual emerged from. This was really interesting in a sense, because I was very keen to see these different types of rituals. For example, there was a woman who was narrating love spells,
potions, yeah,
and potions. So for example, if you want to make your lover obsessed with you, you should create this potion that is made from plucking different hairs from different areas in your body using your menstrual blood, and that was an actual love potion from Serbia.
What was fascinating about that potion, that you make the potion with your own hair, your own menstrual blood, and then you give it to your friend. So it's actually not the body components of the woman who wants her lover to come back, but it's actually from a friend. I thought it was just like charming, like that you become this witch and your body is supercharged with power, and you give your power to a friend, kind of. Something that we all got struck with was the sense of the erotic. So I think for us, studying sexuality was really it was really compelling to see how such a famous artist who worked with her body, who worked with political themes, would treat erotic. And something that I was really surprised by was how erotic became kind of reduced, or maybe just reduced is not the right term, but maybe it was assimilated with this tension between to reproduction. All things that I don't usually associate erotic with.
I think that was the biggest disappointment for me in terms of the event. I found little traces of the erotic. I found that it was mostly dealt with fertility in the context of marriage, and there were many rituals around fertility and reproduction. There was so much around death, but there was very little when it came to the erotic. Also, I found very interesting how much it de-eroticized the body and the naked body. Because there were many bodies that were naked during the performances, but you would not see these bodies in any way as erotic bodies or sexual bodies.
Yeah, I think the old performance kind of worked around folk or traditions around fertility, but also fertility, for example, of the soil, of the ground, fertility of harvesting, and the communication, like the erotic tension was between penises and vaginas. Like literally there was what we call like a valley of dicks of these fake big dicks, separating the rituals of women with the rituals of men for preserving the fertility of the harvest. And there was something about, erotic just being a form of putting these two genitalia in conversation, in connection, without really asking for desire. In fact, there was very little desire among the performers themselves. Like women were performing with women, men with men, and there was only one performance in which there was a sort of physical intimacy and touch, which was the dance of the skeleton. But as the title says, it was dancers completely naked, performing this tradition of dancing above graves. And in this case, they were dancing with these fake plastic skeletons, kind of providing them a sense of intimacy, touching. And I have to be honest, there was one dancer that really understood the assignment, and he felt so intimate with that pile of plastic bones that was really touching. But at the same time, that was the peak of desire and sexual excitement, if you wish. So for me, this is it, maybe, that erotic did not equate with sexual excitement. It equated with something a bit more universal or even paradigmatic around reproduction.
That's really interesting that you felt that this particular performance was the one that felt a little bit more erotic. For me, for example, this performance was something that I didn't watch. I passed by it. I saw that it was taking place in a cemetery. People were dancing with skeletons, and to me it felt too much about death, and I didn't want to engage with that energy. So I didn't watch this specific ritual. And I didn't expect that it would be so much around death. Also, the main stage where they were dancing, and there was a coffin on stage, and there was clearly someone that was dying and dead. That was also another performance that I didn't quite enjoy, because I felt that it was too much around death, and there was too much dark energy around.
I didn't
that.
mind the dark energy because I think it speaks, now it's going to sound very intense, but it's the cycle of life, isn't it? So as much as reproduction, that death is its counterpart. I think there was definitely something around, I don't know, keeping some sort of distance from it as well. Like some of the scenes were on big screens. So for example, you had this choir of traditional male singers with their trousers opens, and like only after I realized by reading the descriptions that it was their erected penises out, and it was meant to embody both vulnerability as well as masculinity. And that I was like, okay, I don't know about that, it just feels like very much a symbol, but I also like very remote, very static to a certain extent. And maybe because we come from cultures where, I don't know, a graffiti of a dick is still quite a common thing to see on a wall in a regular, in a city. If you walk around the city, you will see some of these images. Like there is still like a strong presence of these signs in the collective mind. I don't know, what do you think?
I agree with you. In that sense, it didn't feel that much transformative, especially in relation to the erotic, as you've mentioned. And to me, for example, one of the performances that I found striking was a woman inside something that resembled a bathtub and another woman pouring water on top of her. So she was wearing this red dress that was sheer, her breasts were out, and she had a big, fake, pregnant belly. And we read afterwards in the leaflet that this was a wedding ritual, and essentially they would do this to bless the women and make them more fertile.
Yeah, it was actually, I think, taken by an Instagram post from a Roma community. So it was actually, apparently she mentioned in the press conference that this was a contemporary evidence of a traditional ritual. So yeah, quite. But thinking about how she justified some of her pieces, I think when she introduced the ritual to the crowd, she almost warned the audience that what they were about to see was not pornographic. She almost like invited everyone to suspend judgment. And maybe after having watched it, I was never tempted to think that this was pornographic. Like during the 4 hours, that never crossed my mind. By the nature of the show and the kind of content, again, it felt very much like putting on stage traditions that belong to different century, nothing that had to deal with sexual excitement. But maybe she did face criticism. She did face some sort of issues in putting together such a production where nakedness and these symbols were so obvious.
To me, it was something that was a little bit disappointing because in the way that she presented her work as well, she mentioned that in culture we label anything erotic as pornography, and Balkan Erotic Epic is the most ambitious work that she's done in her career. But she clearly made that distinction that whatever she presented was not pornography, which in a sense contributes to labeling pornography as something that is not highbrow and it's something that should be criticized. And of course, you don't want your work under any circumstances to be labeled as pornographic.
That's a good point.
She could have dealt with sexuality more explicitly, and given that she had the creative freedom to do so in Manchester, I think it was a little bit of a lost opportunity there.
And it was a very heterosexual sexuality in place by the nature of rituals and maybe by the nature of I don't know, wanting to represent this tension, or maybe lack of communication, because lots of it was, potions to regain your lover, or how to genitals that would not really be in touch with one another. There was an element of tension. The only quote unquote queer performance was the one of the Zworn virgins who were performing with these blades. And these are women that, in the traditions of Albania, I think, they can take the life of a man by swearing to be virgins for the rest of their life. So they abdicate their womanliness, if you wish, their femininity, and they are allowed to live as free men. So doing activities such as hunting or taking care of the herd that men, or smoking, the only men would be allowed to do. And I think that was sort of opening up a bit, but that wasn't erotic and that wasn't sexual. Everyone was sort of on a fighting regime, let's put it this way. So only after I kind of understood a bit what was going on.
That's really interesting that you mentioned this one, because it completely didn't register with me while watching the performance. It was after reading about this that I understood what this was about. And that's something I struggle with sometimes, because I want to go always blind into performances of whatever medium. So I'm wondering, is it something that you do as well, or did you read before going into this?
No, I read really little, and I think that by the nature of the show, there was very little to read when we actually walked in, right? Like, the reviews were not out yet, the show was just launched. Which takes me to my last point, which is the pleasure of being lost. So I think on one hand, you don't grasp everything, but because we had no access to our phones, it was dark, we were immersed in that place, and in a sense we also didn't know what was going to happen, like if there would be the same action going on over and over, a new performance, a change of scenery, like you had no clue. I really felt lost in a good way, like really present in that space. So for me, that was a bit of an epic ritual in celebrating the moment, not just celebrating, but really feeling the energies there, even too much, as you mentioned about the dark energy. But I think that having that suspension is really a gift, to be immersed into something for almost 3 hours, because I think we didn't last the whole 4, but 3 hours of complete detachment from everything else. That's quite an experience.
I wonder if we would have lasted the 4 hours if we had the opportunity to be immersed and it was our choice. Because for me, the fact that they gave us these pouches to put our phones inside and lock them and kind of be directed to do this felt really uncomfortable. I don't like when you go into a performance and they tell you how to experience it. I think it's a little bit of common sense that you shouldn't film during the performance, the same way that you go into a museum and they ask you not to use flash photography. So I think that I would have enjoyed it more if I had the option to check my phone and see what time it is, and I didn't have to lock it away. I didn't like that. Sorry.
I thought it was amazing to not see any screen around. Honestly, that is the epic content for me.
Also, I have to say something else, because this really impacted the way that I experienced this performance. There was nowhere to sit down. You could sit down on the floor.
There was the floor. The floor was soft and cushy and pillowy.
They had a lush carpet and you could sit on the floor, but how comfortable it is to sit on the floor. I saw some people carrying with them some stools. Mm-hmm. You could get them from the space and use these, but you had to carry them around, which for me, again, it was another barrier to be immersed, because after a point, my body was hurting, my back was hurting, I was not comfortable. I think that if there was seating around the space, I would have enjoyed way more the performances that required you to sit down and take them in for a long period of time.
I actually thought that was intentional because many rituals, and I'm here also thinking about Catholic ones I was raised with, weddings that last hours, whole days. You are uncomfortable, like your back hurts at some point. Everything you want to do is take your shoes off and just like not talk to anyone, not be like immersed in it. But I think it's the very nature of the ritual that is a bit exhausting, taking every bit of energy that is in yourself.
Okay, I see this point of view now, but while I was in there, it did not work for me.
So if you have seen Marina Abramović Balkan Erotic Epic, let us know what you thought of it. And in the meanwhile, thank you for listening to this episode of Frisky.
Thank you everyone for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of Frisky.
Yeah, follow us and share this episode.
Bye.